I just recorded the fifth episode about my mother in Bosnian language. I think I spoke the least about my mother, more so about anything else. I don't know why, I just feel like there's just so many things I want to do, so many places I want to be, so many people I want to meet, so many women I want to sleep with. But not enough time. You kind of have to choose one, and stick with one country, one woman, one car, one love. But I just feel hungry for all these experiences. I think that something that I didn't speak about in the Bosnian video is that this hunger, you know, was given to me by my late mother. This woman was an angel, an absolute angel, and to this day I love her and I forgive her for everything that happened between us, and I hope she can forgive me, because I definitely was not an angel as a child. But because of the way she had her life, she just felt like she was cheated out of some major experiences. She was a good singer who never got a chance to sing. She really liked politics and never got a chance to get into politics. She liked people, never got into a chance to work with people. She loved traveling. She really didn't get a chance to travel that much outside of our own country. Wanted to learn languages. I mean, there's so many things that she really wanted to do and never got a chance to do it. It wasn't her time. In the words of Tragically Hip, Ahead of the Century, song that they sing. Some experiences are not meant to be yours, just like the things that I'm talking about, such as, the concept of, sharing and open love and all that stuff. None of that I can do because I was raised in a different system, but my children will live a completely different life. My child as 15-year-old is playing a bass in a rock and roll band and he's having a great time. It took me 30-40 years to get into music, and I'll probably die before I become a famous rock star. I hope I don't, but you know what I mean. He has more of a chance to do that. He started earlier. I remember me buying my first guitar, which was bought to me by my late mother. Was like buying a freaking building in Hawaii. But he already plays on a Fender jazz bass, made in Mexico. But I mean, that instrument was a dream. Like having an instrument like that when I was a child was a dream to me. Nevertheless, even getting that classical guitar, from my mother for my birthday was just a dream in itself too. I was about, I don't know, 10, 12 or something like that. A little bit about my mother, as I promised. She was born in this town in Herzegovina, the border between Bosnia and Herzegovina. But she was more from Herzegovina than she was from Bosnia. So my father was from Bosnia and my mother was from Herzegovina. And these are two different regions. Bosnia is a mountainous region and Herzegovina is a flat region. Hot, very, how can I say, stingy. Not enough fertile land, lots of rock. Whereas Bosnia is as fertile as it can be. So completely different people. The Herzegovinians are kind of stingy and, economical, trying to survive. And Bosnians are very giving, generous, stubborn as well. My grandmother and my mother's mother was I think probably the first feminist that came out of former Yugoslavia. She was more than that. She got married 4 times to 4 different religious groups. And I only know that her last husband was an Albanian, something like that. And I don't really know much about her other husbands. Interesting This woman was also my hero. I'll talk about her a bit more later on. But the first husband of or my grandfather divorced early on, and my mother was raised by her mother as a single mom, which was a very difficult thing at that time. I remember one of the first times, or one of the times we went to see my grandfather, who remarried to a different city and had different family altogether. And he was somewhat of like a natural doctor. So I went there to visit him with my sister and her ex-husband, and we were there, and my sister's husband was complaining about some pain in his arm. So my grandfather said, "Look, this is what you need to do. You go down to the river, you dig out some worms, lots of worms. You bring them home, take that pan, put some oil, put the worms in the pan, stick them into oven, bake them really well, grind them, and then put them on your arm and put some kind of dressing around it and keep it for overnight or a couple of days and you'll be okay." We were like, "Nah." We're not gonna do that for sure, because Jesus Christ. So we kind of like changed that story to become like a short version, and we said, okay, this is what you do. You go down to the river, get some worms, put them in a pan, bake them, get some bread and eat them. And you'll have no more problems at all. We did neither of those things, but the way he said that so seriously, like, we realized that it actually makes sense, because he has done some amazing things over the years, helping people with different ailments. But being a modern child and somebody coming from like a place that has this like thinking that the Western medicine is basically injections and pills, using worms would be like, come on. And as I said earlier, like something that happened to my grandmother from my father's side is that she died because of the bloody leeches. So lots of interesting stories for sure. I think that my mother just had a very difficult childhood, because being raised by a single mother in former Yugoslavia at that time was a stigma, just a stigma. Even now there's a stigma attached to being a single parent, especially in, I would say, former Yugoslavia, and maybe not so much here, but there is, one is. And you can imagine 50 years ago, it was like, oh my God, this woman is a devil. Honestly, they probably thought my grandmother was a devil, especially because of the fact that she actually married and divorced, because a woman never divorced a man, unless it was something very, very, very horrible. So because of that, and because she got married so young and everything, she just felt unfulfilled. And that definitely affected our lives. We had a very, 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 very difficult relationship. And it, of course, affected me in many, many different ways. Again, probably the happiest time was with us living in that one small room, because later on when we moved, which is so funny, like, you think that moving to a better place, to a better location, you would be happier, but it doesn't always work like that. The same thing goes with my own family. I started my own family in South Korea, and we lived at the university campus where I worked as a professor, and the university gave us like a small 2-bedroom apartment, and the 4 of us lived there. Both of our children were raised at university, surrounded with thousands of students and on this campus, and it was such a beautiful experience. We shared everything in that small apartment. Luckily we had 2 rooms that my wife and my ex-wife and I had like a little bit privacy, unlike my parents. But you know, when we moved to Canada, I bought a house and a restaurant and had so much more, we were not as happy. Bigger is not always better. More is not always better, for sure. You know, I guess it's not just that. It's just, you know, what you're used to. You kind of have to prepare yourself, you know. Going from poor to rich is just as difficult as it is from going to, you know, from rich to poor. It's very, very interesting. Uh, my mother and father, of course, had a beautiful relationship for the first couple of years, even though my father had to give up his lifestyle. I remember one night he came home after a soccer game, because my father was an administrative member of a local soccer team, so I used to travel with them, and he came home one night and his voice was completely gone because they were like, you know, cheering on their team the whole day. So when he came home and he was like talking and saying, "It's me," you know, and my mother was like, "No, I don't recognize your voice." She didn't let him in. She was afraid. And that night she told him, "Look, you have to choose either soccer or your family." Yeah. The beginnings of resentment, you know, when you ask somebody to choose between, you know, what they love to do and what they have to do, of course you're gonna create troubles. But, you know, that's how she saw it. And again, it goes back to that whole need, more proactive need of our society with our families. You know, when people get together, they don't know about themselves. You know, no man is a stranger but to himself. You don't know yourself. You don't know how it is that you should treat yourself, let alone another human. And then when the children come, we need counselors, you know, to teach us how to love ourselves, how to love our partners, how to date our partners, how to raise our children. We didn't know. I mean, growing up, and especially later on when we moved to that new apartment and my mother and I had such horrific episodes, neither of us knew how to get help. It's not that easy, you know. Some people think I just dial a phone number on the milk box, but that's really not gonna solve your problems. You know, the social workers might come and remove you from your home, but they're not gonna solve the problems. They're not gonna be able to like sit down and teach your mother or you how to behave with each other. They're not going to be able to change things that happened before, the regrets that you carry from your own childhood. It's difficult, for sure. There is no right way except being there for each other all the time and doing it together as a community rather than individually, because alone you're nothing. Community is everything. One of the stories I remember, you know, and this is something that I was talking about today to my old man because he's still alive. I recently went to hospital and had this test, and I got diagnosed with this hereditary condition of my heart on his birthday. And I knew that you know, I would be going to a hospital on his birthday to do this test, checking for the same things, having the same symptoms. Before I even went in, I knew what the results would be, and sure enough, after the test, you know, I told the doctor, I have a feeling I'm going to have this procedure that you're recommending. I have exactly like a month or so later on my mother's birthday. And he was like, "No, you're not gonna wait that long. It's gonna be a couple of weeks and you're gonna do that." No. I somehow had a feeling that both of my parents had a big, like, you know, part into this. And I always say, you know, I'm not a woman, I'm not a man. I'm half my mother, I'm half my father. You know, and I still carry on their legacy into the future and, you know, try to figure out their own issues through my own life. So sure enough, you know, I got scheduled to do this procedure just a few days before my birthday, before my mother's birthday, and then it gets moved around again, unfortunately, after a lot of trouble, to be on her birthday. So in a couple of days on my mother's birthday, I'm going to have a procedure done. If that's not a coincidence, I don't know what it is. I mean, seriously, you have two parents, two different birthdays. It's like the universe is telling you know, both of these are equally important, mother and father. You know, one of the songs that I wrote was mother, mother, no baby. Father, father, no baby. Mother, father, baby. But it really illustrates, you know, the duality needed for the singularity. Sometimes 1 plus 1 is 1, sometimes 1 plus 1 is 3. Anyways, the story that my father was telling me, you know, I was, you know, kind of telling him I'm really worried about coming out of the hospital, you know, because I've been here for so long, and when I go out, I need to decide how I want to live my life. You know, I have to make some changes, but it seems to me that while I was here at the hospital, while I've been here, I met the devil, I met God, I met myself. I realized what life is all about, and it's really difficult, you know, for me to make that choice, because to truly live with God's word and to do the right thing, you really have to put in a lot of effort. You know, like, it's so easy to go buy a burger. It's cheap, it's delicious, it's everywhere. But if you want to have a salad, you have to go buy a salad. Make sure it's organic. Wash it. Eat it quickly, because it only lasts for like a day or two, and it's expensive. So truly, to do the right thing, it's really difficult. Whether it comes to, you know, eating habits or dating or being in a war. I've already said so many times, in the war, the only person you have to kill is yourself. When you get that gun, you have a choice at pointing it at somebody else or pointing it at yourself. The moment you point it at somebody else, you become a selfish prick, pretty much, because you think that somebody's life is less important than yours. That's what it is, you know. You have to make that choice, and both, you know, my mother and I made our own choices, and it took us a long time to come clear with them. Unfortunately, my mom passed away very young. She was only 47 years old. It was in 2002 when I first moved to South Korea. And I only saw her for the first, like I said, 15 years of my life, because I left my home when I was 15 and I came back again when I was 25. First time after the war. So for 10 years she hated herself for the war, for letting me go, for, you know, it was a difficult time for her, you know. And this is why I feel sometimes, you know, that all of these things that I'm trying to do with my whole life are part of her own destiny. You know, you have to choose whether you want to do it or not, I guess, too. And you recognize the signs and the symbols everywhere, you know. I could not remember my mother's birthday until 2001, I think. When was September 11 terrorist attack. I was always confused whether my mother's birthday was September 11 or September 13. And then when the terrorist attack happened, I realized, okay, it's 9/11. This is my mother's birthday. So now it's very easy for me to remember, even though my mother is not around here, but that day has a definitely special meaning in my life. I even Googled the angel numbers 9/11. That also has a specific meaning to me. And today when I was talking to my sister and I was talking about my mother, I was watching a video which ended at 9 minutes and 11 seconds. As I was saying 9/11, the door slammed. So many coincidences. I believe she's still here with us, and you know, a lot of what I'm supposed to do, what I'm doing, is definitely her own destiny that becomes part of my own. We always make a decision, you know. You have to make a decision between right and wrong things, and I think that in many ways she didn't get a chance to decide, that a lot of these things were pushed upon her, and because of that she lived the life that she'd did, you know, and I'm trying to bring some awareness to it, I guess, through this podcast. Why not? You know, in next episodes, I'm definitely going to talk more about some other experiences that we had over the years. There was a lot of funny things that happened, sad things that happened, a lot of little side stories. And I hope that somehow through these episodes of this podcast, I can shed some light on this. Because my goal is to, by sharing my own story, let you know that you're not alone, that you're going through the same thing, and that your stories are just as important, and then you should share them as well. Love you all, and see you in the next video. 3, 2, 1.